Okay, so we're up to, we left off last time in middle of the halachas of the kshira, of how we tie, how we put on the tefillin shel yad and make the kesher. So we learned, just briefly to discuss, that the minimum that the kshira has to be is hiduk hatfillin ba'ifin sheneitzeh sivav echad saviv azariah. That minimally it has to be that at least there's one time that you go around your arm. So you put on your tefillin. Obviously, you don't put it on top of anything, but you put it on, and at least you have it going around once. That's the minimum.
You have a giant. So small for him. No way to go around with bicep 3 times. You still have room for anything. You go out the arm and you have to figure what to do. You can start sacrifice one of the two.
Well, what you would do is, it's a very good question, and we'll get to it in a minute. It doesn't discuss specifically that, but the answer would be that you do the kesher over here, and then you come to the finger. You skip the stuff in the middle. That's not as important as the beginning and the end.
So get one here, it gets the finger here.
Correct.
I didn't make that up. No,
Yeah, no. These things happen. So that's why it's important that the ritzuas should be a little bit longer than shorter. Sometimes they're made relatively short, and if you have somebody that's a little bit bigger, it's difficult to wrap around the tefillin. Minig yafa. Now, again, another thing, an important piece is when you put on the tefillin, this kesher, the kesher that's on the side of the shel yad, it should be next to the lev. In other words, it's over here on this side, as opposed to on that side. And another thing is, we learned that yeshli hizar shehayut shel kesher atfilin yitzamud l'tfilin. That the yud, this is the yud of the kesher. So the yud of the kesher should be next to the tefillin. So that, if you see, there's a cover on the tefillin shel yad. And the cover on the tefillin shel yad is to protect the corners, not to get banged up. But the cover also has, if you notice, it's cut out, right? Now, why is it cut out? If it needs to be protecting the corners, why don't you protect all the corners? Why do we cut out a piece over here? And the answer is we cut it out so that the kesher, this yud, should be able to touch the tefillin. And if it's not cut out, there'll be something interrupting in between the yud and the tefillin itself. And when we put on the tefillin, what's important to try to keep in mind is you put on the tefillin, so you put it on like this, and you tighten it, right? And now when you make a shin around here, right? 1, 2, and 3. So you try to have it so that this brings the yud so that it touches the tefillin. So that, often you find where instead of it doing that, you have the yud like this. It's not the way it should be. It should be the yud touching the tefillin. You're yotzei the mitzvah, but it's not done in the best way. The best way is that the yud should be touching the tefillin, and the only way it can be touching is if when you have the cover is on. If it's on, it should be cut out. So, and sometimes, again, you have to be careful. Sometimes you have the cover and it's on, and you don't realize it's on wrong. You can put it on this way. So then what happens is the cut is over here, but it's not in the right place where it should be, so that the yud should be able to be touching the tefillin itself. So you have to be careful as to how you put on the tefillin, not just so that you put it on and you make the bracha. There's very specific rules as to how it's best to put on the tefillin in what way. Another thing that is a custom, and we mentioned it last time, there may be a difference. For example, if you take righty's film rather, and put it on a lefty, so we said the way to do it is to put it on this way. So again, so the purpose being so that the yud faces the heart. A, and B, there's another thing, and that is noihagin shahacholol betfilin shel yache be'everes haritzua hama'abarta, that the ma'abarta, which is the part, this side of the tefillin, this side is called the ma'abarta. This is the side where the ritzua goes in. So this is called the ma'abarta. So the way to do it is that the ma'abarta is opposite the elbow, as opposed to opposite the shoulder.
Opposite.
Facing, right. Closest to, correct. Namar b'teira o t'tafes b'ninacha. So that's about the shol yad. What about the shol rosh? What's the specific way that the shol rosh has to be put on?
Part that doesn't face the elbow properly. So why do you have the other one for that person?
I'm sorry. I didn't say the elbow. I meant to say the shoulder. The shoulder, not the elbow. With a lefty, where you have no choice, you have to turn it around. But the way that it's best to do it, and that's why, generally speaking, we have it facing the shoulder. I meant the shoulder. I didn't mean the elbow. Thanks. Right. Namar b'Torah, the Torah says, that the tefillin shel rosh should be put bein einacha. It should be tied, it should be knotted bein einacha. Now, what does bein einacha mean? Literally, bein einacha means over here. And as a matter of fact, the Karaites, who do not believe in Torah Shabbat Peh, in oral law, and I've seen them, they're around, they still exist. In certain parts of Europe, when I was in Italy, I happened to notice somebody who was in Cholon. Okay, they have a whole group of them, right? But what they have is, I noticed somebody in shul, he was davening, and on his glasses, right in between the two eyes, he had a place where there was a place for parshas of tefillin to fit. Because the Karaites feel, it says, bein einacha, between your eyes. So what's the best place to do it between your eyes? When you put it on glasses, right here, right in between, it's between your eyes. Put it over here, it's not between your eyes. So Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral law, teaches us bein einacha means it has to be on your head, but in the middle of the head. Bein einacha, so that it goes right up here in between the eyes. But if you don't learn Torah Shabbat Peh, just looking at the pasuk itself, so when you say you put it on bein einacha, so you put it over there, just as they also say, or when it comes to tzitzis, or the Isa might say, it says you should see the tzitzis. So what do the Karaites do? Come into their house, you have a pair of tzitzis hanging on the wall. Because it says, or the Isa might say, you have to look at them, you have to see them. So they take it literally. They don't learn Torah Shabbat Peh. So they say, it says, or the Isa might say, so you have to hang it up so you can see them. What's that?
What color straps do they have?
What color straps? Well, on the shol rosh, they don't have the straps. They have it.
What about on the out?
What color? Truthfully, I don't recall.
Where would they know to make the flag?
Well, so maybe it's labdafka. Yeah, again, I'm talking about something that's very clear. In Torah, there, where would you know? But they say, it says very clearly, bein einacha. So it says bein einacha. Mashma'usay, and the implication of bein einacha means shatfilin shal reish sichim liis be'emtza reicha v'reish. The Gemara teaches us that bein einacha means that it should be in the middle of the head. That's why we look in a mirror and we look to be sure that it's right in the middle. Sometimes if you have it a little to the side, that's not putting on the tefillin properly. So it has to be bein einacha, right in between. So, sometimes people, however they figure out that it's in the middle, but they do what it takes. Either they look in a mirror or they ask somebody to be sure to check, because that's a halacha that it has to be bein einacha. But בצורך שהחלק החיצוני של התפילין יהי מונח על תחילת מוקים ממנו מתחילים לגדול סיידוס הריש. Now, when we talk about it has to be bein einacha, so on the one hand we say it needs to be, we say it needs to be right in the middle, right? But now if it's right in the middle, where right in the middle? Is it here right in the middle, or is it here right in the middle? Where is it? Where is it supposed to be? And you sometimes find you might be wearing tefillin, and somebody might say to you, your tefillin are too low, or your tefillin are too high. And what does that mean? What's too low? What's too high? We know it has to be in the middle. But besides knowing that it has to be in the middle, it also has to be the outside of the tefillin, meaning this part of the tefillin, it's come on the head. So this part of the tefillin, it has to be at the place where your hairline is, where the hair starts growing. So if your hairline, some people have different hairlines. If you have a hairline that's lower, so you have to have your tefillin lower. What's that? No, you don't have to chase it, but it has to be where it originally was. So what if somebody's bald, what do you do? But actually, it's interesting. Somebody once came to the Rebbe and told the Rebbe that, just wants to tell the Rebbe might not be aware that his tefillin are a little too low. So the Rebbe said, thank you very much, but I just want you to know that I have a low hairline, and that's the way I put the tefillin on.
How do you line it up with the going? Perfectly perpendicular from the wall if it's going to that point.
Well, you gauge it. You gauge it. Yeah, you don't have to take a.
Better to be short than fast.
Well, there's no too short. You try to get it the best you can. There's an expression. Torah wasn't given to angels, so we don't expect you to be exact, but we expect you to be approximately or as close to that as possible.
Once you get past the hairline, you no longer accept.
That's correct. That's correct.
Well,
which is true. Which is true. Actually, your point is another point. I'll take your point further, because there's an expression that says, "Mokim yesh bereish lahaniach shtei batitum." That there's enough room here to put two pairs of tefillin. And that's why there are some people who put on Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. You might find it. I've seen it. I've seen people who have come here to daven in Svas, and they put two pairs of tefillin, and they put one behind the other. So because there's enough room, the Gemara says, on the forehead to be able to put, in other words, the place of the tefillin has enough to be able to put one and another one. Obviously, we're talking about small tefillin, because if it was a big pair of tefillin, it doesn't work. So those people that put one and the other have really small pairs of tefillin, which in itself could be a very big issue, because to make kosher tefillin very small is very problematic. Because very easily, when you start writing very small, one of two things occur. Either you end up having a pair of tefillin that has the parshas printed instead of written, or, and I have seen them myself, I've opened up a pair of tefillin once, and somebody gave me his tefillin to check, and found printed pairs of parshas, because it's literally almost impossible. You have to be an expert to write. Generally, most people don't write very tiny, very small. But here we're talking about not just plain writing. We're talking about writing in the way that film need to be written. The aleph is the writing is a whole special writing, the way every letter has to be written in a very special way. So it's, to find kosher film that are really small. Once upon a time, it was available. Today, with the scribes or with everybody not being as experts as they used to be, maybe the machines are becoming more experts. But when it comes to a scribe who you specifically can't use a machine, you can't use a computer, it has to be handwritten. So, and we're not as experts as we used to be. So that's why you don't find the film to be as kosher as they would otherwise be, where once upon a time you could have relied upon a small pair of tefillin. I remember even when I went on Merker Shlichus, when I was a bacher in yeshiva, we used to go in the summer, we used to go to visit different communities around the country, and we used to take along pairs of tefillin. And the pairs of tefillin that we took along were very specifically very small pairs of tefillin. And they were given out from the Rebbe's office. Take these tefillin, they're kosher, they've been checked. But over the years, it became less and less an option. Those pairs of tefillin, I remember at that time, it goes back a couple of years, it was about 35, 40, no, not 35, 40. It's more like 45. For how much? 90. And I'm telling you, when I went on Merker Shlichus, I paid for a pair of tefillin like that $18. So just to give you an idea. But again, the point of it is because the smaller they are, the more difficult they are to write. And obviously, when you talk about certain things that we're discussing here, it's a minhag to do it this way, that, or the other way. The writing is halacha. It has to be written. And if it's not written properly, you're not putting on film. So you have to be extremely careful in the way that it's being put on. Okay, so we'll stop with this for the moment.